All right, it's nearly 8:15 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. Here's what's happening on the newspapers this morning. We're going to start with the Irish Independent and its team news ahead of the Dublin Mayo game at Croke Park tomorrow evening. And the news is that Michael Darmacoli may be the one to make way from this Dublin team. There's indications from Conor McKeown here that James McCarthy is certain to start, he says, but where exactly that will be depends. It could be in midfield, it could be in defence, and Michael Darmacoli, the player to miss out, it seems, there, and that Keane Sullivan to return to the side at centre back, having sat out the last couple of games. So that's the team news. Dublin leak. Unusual.
Yeah, very unusual. This kind of has the bang of a back page of the Irish Independent before a Six Nations game, which has a really weird feel. Like, just for people who don't recognise that reference, like, I mean, 9 times out of 10 that means a correct team is leaked from Joe Schmidt's camp somewhere with very, very good information, which tends to get circulated as one of the national newspapers. I don't recall it happening with Dublin in quite some time, and like, you trust that there's like some very, very good information coming here. To be fair, the piece does kind of weigh up two different options. It's not saying this is definitely going to happen. There is a suggestion that Michael Darmacoli might lose out. Like, why will Michael Darmacoli lose out? It's nothing to do with his form. I think he's been really, really good this year. It's to do with, 50 minutes, 55 minutes on the clock and Mayo are still in the game. He is one hell of a weapon to bring in. And scoring goals galore as well, like he's coming in off the bench. But I suppose he can feel sore. He's having a good season. Yeah, I think he's having a brilliant season. I don't think he'll feel too sore, to be quite honest with you. There's been people who've been put in that position before where they've had to come into the game. Like, more interestingly for me, looking at Conor McKeown's piece this morning, is like looking at that Dublin defence if and when James McCarthy starts in midfield, because you have Keane O'Sullivan coming back to the 6th role, then you've got Johnny Cooper, Philly McMahon and Michael Fitzsimons in the full back line. Very familiar look to it. Like, we talk about how Dublin are constantly evolving and constantly changing things over the years. Really, if you put a gun to Jim Gavin's head and ask him to pick his 6 best backs right now, it hasn't deviated too much over the last few years. So that's something that I take from that as well. And perhaps what's your point? That are you saying that is a lack of freshness or a lack of? In terms there hasn't been that big a turnover whatsoever that people talk about. And you're saying you're pitching that as a bad thing. I'm not in the current context, but I'm talking about the future. When we talk about the future dominance of this Dublin team, when the likes of Philly and Johnny Cooper and Michael Fitzsimons do end up leaving the panel because they're all getting on a bit at this time, is there somebody good enough to actually step in, to actually hold down and be a stalwart of that Dublin defence? I'm not actually sure there is. Like, last year we saw Owen Merchant come in, and to be fair, Mossy made the valid point that he was there for very specific games last year, and that's why he had such a presence last season. But I'm not sure if there is that next defender coming through who is going to be part of a defence that is, in the year 2019, 6 years on from them being stalwarts as well, playing every single game or being Jim Gavin's go-to guys. Now, granted, they still have great players in that position to come off the bench as well. What you're saying is when they're pushing for the 8 in a row, they might be sort of scratching around for defenders. Big alarm bells ringing. Farrell keeping an open mind as last chance. Saloon Beckons writes Rory O'Connor here. This is the team news ahead of the Ireland-Italy game tomorrow, and how it is a bit of a last chance for some of those players that have been named. And Klopp, we have to prove we were right not to spend out of Premier League kick-off here, writes Chris Bascom. Back page of the Herald as well goes with McKeown's story. Mac role is key. Gavin weighing up options ahead of Mayo showdown. And Reds are best in the world. So Jurgen Klopp wants his Liverpool players to prove that they deserve to be top of the pile as they kick off the season tonight. So Norwich City have upped the ante with boss Daniel Farke, claiming that the Reds are the best team in the world right now. And Lukaku says, Inter my only club. Romelu Lukaku has ended his time at Manchester United with an €80 million move to Inter Milan. David Luiz on the front page of the Irish Examiner this morning. Great photo. Looking just like a normal footballer who's really determined to get ahead with the season and make sure that his brand new club that's stone's throw away from his old club, that he makes a big impression. So that's David Luiz there. Who won the window is the question that's asked. Arsenal finally bolster defence as Spurs swoop for Lo Celso and Sessegnon. That's some of the big developments from the transfer window. League has become beige is one of the standout pieces also inside there. Brian Kerr wants to brighten up the League of Ireland, obviously heavily involved with the push for a brand new domestic league here, so the league has become beige. I saw an absolutely fantastic statistic, I think it was from Squawka on Twitter yesterday. So they went through the top 4 true balls attempted by Arsenal players last season. So at number 4, you've Hector Bellerin, who attempted 6. At number 3, you've Mesut Ozil, who attempted 7. Matteo Guendouzi was in second, who attempted 9. And Alexandre Lacazette was first, who attempted 10. Who do you think was the top player in the Premier League when it comes to attempted through balls last season? Attempted through balls. Who was number 1 in your list? Alexandre Lacazette was number 1 for Arsenal. For Arsenal. with 10.
It seems to me to be an incredibly low number, but I'm going to call your bluff here and say that it's him.
He's actually on the front of the Irish Examiner this morning. David Luiz
For attempted.
with the most attempted through balls. So Alexandre Lacazette had 10. How many do you think Luiz had?
10 seems low, so I'm going to go back in my previous statement and say 25.
41.
Right.
Quite the stat. So he is
Attempted.
Attempted.
He's brilliant at attempting through balls.
It does bolster your argument. I'm not going to lie, but I'm all about fairness here. When it comes
you
to
don't have the stat of actual success rate, do you?
No, I didn't have time to get that.
I'd say that, yeah.
Front page of the Racing Post is Friday Night Fever. Can leading 2000 Guineas contender Siskin rise to the Ballydoyle Challenge in the Group 1 Phoenix Stakes at the Curragh, they ask. And then on the back page, they ask, is this the start of something special? Liverpool begin their quest to go one better by hosting Norwich.
The Times of London, the big story here is that plan to ban rugby tackles above the waist. This is moves afoot by World Rugby to change the tackle to below the waist in something that could come into play by the 2023 World Cup. It's going to be happening at a bit of a low level to begin with, along with some other interesting developments that we might get Mike McCarthy's thoughts on a little bit later. You can see the big picture of David Luiz there as well, doing his thing. It's funny that I wonder why a lot of newspapers have chosen to put that on their back page. Yeah, it is.
With signing of the deadline day?
Angry Zaha to miss opener. This is quite a disappointing story. Gary Jacob and Paul Joyce here. It was Wilfred Zaha, we learned yesterday, was trying to push through that move to Everton from Crystal Palace. He refused to train yesterday. But you would have assumed then once the window is done and the business is done and you're staying put that he's in the right frame of mind, but he's indicated that he's not in the right frame of mind to face, of course, Everton in the Premier League tomorrow after he was denied the chance to move to Merseyside.
Back page of the Mirror leads with that story as well. No-go Wilf. Hodgson tells Rebel Zaha to train hard and forget about any move. Andy Carroll then pictured as well. My unfinished business at Toon, and Louise in shotgunner's move where he'll be joined by Boyd, Tierney and Jurgen Klopp saying, prove I was right not to spend big like our rivals.
The Irish Sun, meanwhile, Wilf still wants out. So this is a continuation of that story with Wilfred Zaha and Carroll back at the Toon. Andy Carroll, who I think is still battling injury, if I'm right, is back at Newcastle and looking to make an impact at one of his former clubs, of course. And he's returned home to Newcastle with unfinished business to attend to. Steve Bruce is probably the right man to get the best out of him.
Back page of the Irish Daily Star is we can be cop dogs. Jurgen tells squad to repay his faith. And surgery blow for Sané. This is really unfortunate because Leroy Sané will not play again this season, it seems, after Manchester City confirmed he has suffered anterior cruciate ligament damage. And he's got a 24-page Premier League pullout in the Star as well. And Kieran Donaghy, do or die Mayo, can take down the Dubs. He was, of course, on the shot clock yesterday, predicting that Mayo were going to win by 1. And he does say, kind of back that up this morning and is going with Mayo to win again. He says, I feel Mayo will take down the Dubs. Interestingly, he says, if you remove Dublin's 7-point win in the 2015 All-Ireland semi-final, there's been just 3 points separating the teams in the other 5 matches. And then if you look at Gavin's options beyond the starting 15, he says, over those 6 games, Dublin's bench outscores that of Mayo by 213 to 5 points. Mayo subs failed to score in 4 of the ties. So that gives you a bit of an insight into why exactly Jim Gavin might look at Michael Darragh-Macaulay as not being dropped, but as an option late in the game.
One story that I didn't mention from The Sun was that Roy Keane's been in to speak with the England rugby team. It's an exclusive here by Johnny Fordham. He's been in to have a bit of a chat with them and talk to them about, how to do well at a World Cup. Maybe not so much that, but certainly talking a little bit about his career. He had lunch apparently with the backroom staff and was just generally in there to inspire them. It's great things.
Very interesting. Eddie Jones knows just as well how to do good stuff at a World Cup. Eddie Jones is fascinating actually in this regard. I mean, are we going to see an Eddie Jones special over the next couple of weeks and months from an English perspective? Because
in what sense?
When he first comes in and has a brilliant Six Nations immediately with England, you're thinking to yourself, right, 2019, these guys are going to be front runners for the World Cup. All of a sudden then things start to turn south. Obviously started the Six Nations this year very well, but I think even at the end of this year's Six Nations, you're looking at England as somebody who still has Eddie Jones as a bad label rather than a good one. I don't think so. I think when you go into a World Cup, he's somebody that you want in your corner. And I mean, bringing somebody in like Roy Keane, there has to be some sort of method to that.
Yeah.
And
they got to keep it.
Perhaps he didn't hear about Saipan. Maybe he only knows about 94.
The Irish Times this morning, it's rugby all the way here. Opportunity knocks for Japan hopefuls, writes Jerry Thornley there. Murphy and Conway looking to win in the Japan numbers game, writes Gavin Cummins. That's crunching some of the names that may not make the cut and who have a last gasp chance this weekend to put their name at the pecking order, specifically Jordy Murphy and Andrew Conway, and more there about the tackle height and also about the All Blacks. That's front page of the Irish Times sports section today.
Andy Carroll is pictured on the back page of The Guardian. Look who's back in tune. Andy Carroll, that's not me putting on a Scottish accent. Andy Carroll comes back home to Newcastle on a free transfer 8 years after he left for £36 million. So 8 years ago, Andy Carroll, £36 million. Alex Iwobi yesterday, 8 years on for the same price. Silver lining then, Everton give up the chase for Zaha to sell it for £35 million. Iwobi, they also say on the back page of The Guardian.
Why would you be putting on a Scottish accent?
Because the headline is Look who's back in tune.
Yeah.
If you pronounce town in a Scottish accent, how do you pronounce it?
Well,
probably
that's
tune.
The Newcastle.
I know that. People who are listening and can't see the words T-O-O-N.
Newcastle, that's why it's called the tune.
I know that. I get that. It was a joke, Adrian. It was a joke.
It was, Sane's big loss, the Irish Daily Mail this morning. This is City Star loses out on 21 million Bayern switch after suffering a cruciate ligament injury last weekend. Pretty unfortunate stuff. And Ireland look for liftoff. This is a picture of Joey Carberry there ahead of the Ireland-Italy game.
There's a lot of pictures of Wilfred Zaha looking concerned. There's a vast array of them, and there's another one here on the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section. Get me out of here, they say. Zaha sent home to calm down after a £60 million move to Everton is dashed in the last few hours. The Palace striker is prepared to move abroad, with top European clubs keen to sign the 26-year-old.
A few of the other ones we wanted to give you a quick look at. AS, first of all, the English version. Hopefully here we'll give you a quick spin on what's happening in some of these newspapers outside of Ireland as well. On this Friday morning, Neymar wants the move, but only Barca and Madrid are in the mix, according to AS there this morning. Thumbs up for him. Nice little front page. UK back pages as well. We'll flip you through some of these, what's going on here. I think we've got the Daily Mirror to begin with. There's frequently some differences in their chief editorial lines, but it's Wilfred Zaha all the way there. And David Luiz, you can see grabbing out of the badge as he moves to Arsenal. Andy Carroll there as well. The Star get back to work. Zaha stays as Palace tell him to get to grip with things. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few weeks. Meanwhile, we have the what have we got there? The Guardian, and it's Newcastle United and Andy Carroll reunited there. And silver lining, Everton give up the chase for Zaha to settle for 35 million quid. It will be the Mail. Carroll, are you having that as tab of the morning? Do you want to do your tune gag again? Andy's back at Newcastle, but he is out for 4 weeks. He's hardly in the door and he's out again. So that's what we got there. The Irish News, meanwhile, here at home, give you a quick look at this. Niall Flood and Tyrone can adapt to whatever Kerry throw at us. The adaptability of Tyrone was something I'd seen in some of his quotes this morning, that they're not this one-dimensional team anymore, that actually they can go long if they need to, they can play it out from the back if they need to.
Fair play. Well done, Tyrone.
All-round team.
There's a little bit of an insecurity, isn't there, in the Tyrone psyche this week? Seem to be telling us all how amazing they are, as if that the fact that they're not favourites has started to irk with them a little bit. The fact that a bunch of kids are 1 point favourites against them, but it doesn't matter. I'm sure they'll get the business done on Sunday, Tyrone. Put them back in their place.
That's not true. Generally, it's funny in sport how often where teams are like the slight underdog that come out and tell you how amazing they are, and actually obviously in the case like Dublin's case you have to keep telling people that we're grand, but there's still so much room to improve. You never do that when you're the underdog. You're not like, yeah, you're right, yeah, geez, we've got a lot of room to improve here.
How many times do you think Mickey Harp will say they wrote us off all week long if Tyrone win on Sunday?
You're right though.
Who's written them off?
Well, just by the nature of Kerry being favourites.
Who's written them off?
I mean, people will be predicting that Kerry are going to win the game.
Don't think that's actually the case. I think there's actually been a fine balance, if not more of a leaning towards Tyrone in predictions this week. Certainly on off the ball, yeah. Going
against favouritism.
Slight favouritism, yeah. It's only 1 point favouritism, so it's much of a muchness, really, isn't it? But I'm sure he'll be delighted that the siege mentality worked come Sunday. That's what's in the papers this morning. We are going to talk more GA in just a little bit. We've plenty of that to come. We're going to talk Liverpool as well with Gareth Roberts of the Anfield Wrap. You're going to be a busy man this weekend. I am. Go to Croke Park both days.
Scouting mission tomorrow. ahead of Sunday and obviously ahead of the final to sort of weigh up the opposition.
Yes.
What are you expecting tomorrow? What's the Eoin Sheahan call?
Dublin will win tomorrow.
Comfortably?
Not sure if it'll be comfortable. I don't think you can ever play against Mayo when it's fully comfortable. And I'm looking at 6-7. I'm not sure what the handicap is. I think it's 5. I think Dublin will cover that.
6, I think, is it?
If it's 6, then I'll say I'll go one further and I'll say they'll cover, and I think they'll match the 2015 replay in the semi-final and go for the 7 points. Also matches their win against Kerry in 2013. So I think I think Dublin will win, and I would love it. I would love it so much if Mayo did manage to beat them tomorrow. I'm not going to hide that. I'm not going to hide that.
Yeah.
As much as
as much as you dislike Mayo,
as much as I've got a complicated relationship with Mayo,
yeah.
I would love to see them win tomorrow.
Yeah, all right. Well, plenty more on Off the Ball over the weekend.